On one island off the coast of Brazil, the government has made it illegal to set foot on the shore. Not because of political instability, not because of military activity, because the snakes will kill you. Ilha da Queimada Grande holds between 1 and 5 golden lancehead pit vipers per square metre of land. Their venom breaks down muscle tissue within hours. It is the highest concentration of venomous snakes on Earth, on a piece of land smaller than a city park. And it is just one of 13 places on this planet where time, for reasons the modern world struggles to explain, simply stopped moving. The reason these places exist at all comes down to a single mechanism: isolation. 6 million years ago, the Socotra Archipelago broke away from the African continent and drifted into the Indian Ocean. What remained behind on those islands kept evolving, but only inward, folding back on itself, producing trees that look like inside-out umbrellas and plants found nowhere else on Earth. The Galapagos produced the only marine iguana in the world, a lizard that learned to dive and graze on underwater algae because there was nothing else to eat and nowhere else to go. A lake in Palau, sealed from the ocean for 12,000 years, gave its jellyfish population enough time to nearly lose their sting entirely. No predators meant no need for venom. Spielberg chose the coastal redwood forests of California not as a stand-in for the Jurassic period, but because those forests are the closest living approximation to it. A bird in New Guinea, the cassowary, carries a dagger-shaped claw capable of disemboweling a human in a single strike, a weapon left over from an era when such defenses made sense. A fish in African rivers routinely attacks crocodiles. A cave in Vietnam is large enough to contain its own weather system, with clouds forming inside and jungle growing in the absence of direct sunlight. 13 locations, 13 pauses in evolutionary time. The deeper into the list you go, the stronger the feeling that something fundamental has been preserved, not by accident, but because the walls held. The real question this raises is not how these places survived. It is what happens when the walls finally come down. There is a place in the Arabian Sea where the rules of biology quietly stopped applying. Roughly 240 kilometers off the coast of Yemen, and the same distance east of the Horn of Africa's Cape Guardafui, a small cluster of islands drifts in near-total isolation. 4 main islands and a scatter of bare rocks that most maps barely bother to label. Geologists will tell you this archipelago is a fragment of Gondwana, the ancient supercontinent, broken away from the African-Arabian plate approximately 6 million years ago. It has been adrift ever since. And in that time, cut off from every evolutionary conversation happening elsewhere on Earth, Socotra became something genuinely singular. The numbers alone are difficult to absorb. Around 37% of its plant species exist nowhere else on the planet, 90% of its reptiles, 95% of its land snails. UNESCO designated the archipelago a World Heritage Site in 2008, reaching for the only comparison that seemed to fit, the Galapagos of the Indian Ocean. But no comparison quite prepares you for the dragon blood tree. Dracaena cinnabari grows in a shape that seems to belong to a different world entirely. A dense, flat canopy spread wide like an inverted umbrella, balanced on a single thick trunk, with rigid leaf clusters pushing only from the very tips of the branches. Cut into the bark and the tree bleeds, a deep, dark crimson resin that traders and physicians were already calling dragon's blood by the time Rome was building its empire. They used it in medicines, in dyes, in lacquers. The trees themselves grow slowly, live for centuries, and gather in fog-caught plateaus where their silhouettes stack against the sky like something from a fever dream. No familiar frame of reference survives contact with that landscape. And that landscape is now under pressure it was never built to absorb. Cyclones, intensified by shifting climate patterns, have struck with increasing destructiveness. The political collapse in Yemen has made protecting the archipelago far harder than designating it. 6 million years of isolation turns out to offer very little defense against a single human generation moving at speed. Socotra is number 13 on our list. What comes next is stranger still. A forest that predates flowers. That's what you're standing in at Redwood National and State Parks on the California coast. A living system that was already ancient when the first flowering plants appeared on Earth. The coast redwood, Sequoia sempervirens, has existed in essentially its current form for around 160 million years. The reason it's still here, while almost everything else from that era is gone, comes down to a single piece of coastal geography: fog. These trees absorb up to 40% of their water directly through their needles from the marine fog layer that rolls in off the Pacific. Strip that fog away and the forest collapses. It's a dependency that has kept the redwoods locked to this narrow coastal strip for longer than California has existed as dry land. The numbers attached to individual trees at this park push against the limits of what feels real. Heights exceeding 115 meters, base diameters above 8 meters, individual specimens alive for more than 2,000 years. Standing next to one, a person doesn't look small, they vanish. The eye loses them entirely against the scale of the trunk. Steven Spielberg understood this when he chose these woods in 1983 to film The Forest Moon of Endor for Return of the Jedi. He wasn't looking for impressive trees, he was looking for an environment that would read as genuinely alien, without any set construction, any costume, any alteration of any kind. The redwood forest delivered that unmodified. The sensation visitors describe isn't awe in any conventional sense. It's closer to temporal vertigo, the specific disorientation of realizing that the thing in front of you was alive when the Jurassic period was ongoing. Multiple mass extinctions have passed through this landscape. The redwoods absorbed them and continued. Ranked 12th among the world's most singular natural destinations, Redwood National and State Parks is less a place to visit than an era to step inside. Next, we cross to the Indian Ocean, where isolation drove evolution towards solutions it never tried anywhere else. The heaviest seed produced by any plant on Earth looks unmistakably like a human pelvis. That anatomical resemblance is not coincidence or folklore. It is simply what the coco de mer palm, Lodoicea maldivica, grows. Each nut weighs up to 25 kilograms, and for centuries, European sailors who found them drifting across the Indian Ocean assumed the tree must grow on the ocean floor, because no island they knew of could produce something so strange. The island was Palau in the Seychelles, and the explanation turned out to be stranger than the myth. Palau is a living piece of Gondwana, the supercontinent that broke apart more than 180 million years ago. When the Indian Ocean tore through that ancient landmass, Palau was cut off before evolution had finished most of its work. What remained had no pressure to change. At the center of that island, in a reserve called Vallee de Mai, 19 hectares designated a UNESCO World Heritage Site in 1983, the coco de mer still dominates. These palms grow to 34 meters and live up to 800 years, producing fruit for centuries from a single trunk. The canopy they form is so dense that rainfall filters through in slow individual drops, as though the forest is rationing the sky. In that permanent half-light lives the Praslam black parrot, a bird found nowhere else on the planet. Critically endangered, its population in 2024 stood at fewer than 100 individuals. What makes Vallee de Mai remarkable as number 11 on this list is not rarity alone. It is the specific kind of preservation at work. Not managed by conservation programs, not rescued at the last moment, but held intact by geography and time. The ocean did the work, the isolation did the rest. This is what a place looks like when humans simply never arrived in time to change it. The jellyfish in this lake have forgotten how to sting. That is not a metaphor. Over thousands of years of isolation, they lost the functional use of their nematocysts, the cellular weapons their ocean relatives still deploy against predators. There are no predators here. There never were, not after the limestone sealed this place shut. And evolution, indifferent as always, stopped investing in weapons that served no purpose. Jellyfish Lake on Isle Malk Island in Palau's Rock Islands ranks number 10 among the most remarkable places on Earth, and that detail about the sting is where the real story begins. Around 12,000 years ago, sea levels dropped. The limestone reef surrounding what had been a coastal inlet closed its last gaps, and a body of water roughly 5 hectares wide and 30 meters deep was cut off from the Pacific Ocean. Whatever lived inside stayed inside. Whatever evolutionary pressures governed ocean life no longer applied. The result is Mastigias papua et pisoni, a subspecies found nowhere else on the planet, not in any other lake, not in any ocean, not in any aquarium bred from wild stock. This is its only address. The daily behavior of these animals reveals how completely the isolation reshaped them. Each morning, millions of golden-domed bodies migrate toward the eastern shore as sunlight hits the water. Through the day, the entire mass tracks the moving light across the lake's surface, deliberately avoiding the shadowed margins near shore, where anaerobic bacteria produce toxic ammonia beneath mats of algae. By evening, the migration reverses. This is not navigation in any conventional sense. The jellyfish carry symbiotic algae, zooxanthellae, living inside their tissues. The algae photosynthesize, the jellyfish position themselves. The relationship feeds both organisms, and has done so in this specific lake for roughly 12,000 years. A diver entering this water moves through something with no modern parallel. Thousands of pulsing, translucent bodies in every direction, pressing softly against skin, parting and rejoining, indifferent and unhurried. Not a spectacle staged for visitors. A closed system that happened to survive because one limestone formation closed at the right moment. What lies beyond that limestone ring is another question entirely. Number 9. Fernandina Island, Galapagos Archipelago. The Pacific, cold and indifferent, pressing against black basalt at the edge of the world. There is one lizard on this planet that swims in the open ocean. Just one. Amblyrhynchus cristatus, the Galapagos marine iguana, exists nowhere else. Not as a relic population clinging to some forgotten coastline. Nowhere. The Galapagos and nothing beyond them. Evolution drew a hard border here. And what it produced inside that border is something that looks less like adaptation and more like a glimpse into deep time. The largest individuals live on Fernandina. Males reach 1.5 meters in length. Their scales are black and dark grey, not incidentally, but precisely because black basalt absorbs heat, and heat is survival. After every dive into the Cromwell Current, where water temperatures can drop to 15 degrees Celsius, an iguana has roughly 30 minutes before its body cools past the threshold of movement. So it returns to the rock and goes still, completely still, for hours. The sun does the work that warm blood does in other animals. It restarts the metabolism, degree by degree. The face is blunt, shortened, flattened at the snout, purpose-built for scraping algae off submerged stone. The claws grip against current. The tail, flattened laterally, moves like a paddle in open water. Every anatomical feature is an answer to a specific question the ocean asked over millions of years. And then there is the detail that has no parallel anywhere among vertebrates. During El Niño events, when warming waters kill the algae and starvation sets in, these animals shrink. The skeleton itself partially resorbs. The body negotiates with its own bones to survive. Darwin watched them in 1835 and called them dark demons, creatures that seem to belong to some other world. Standing on Fernandina, watching hundreds of motionless black bodies arranged across black lava, white salt crusted at their nostrils from the glands that filter the sea from their blood, it is genuinely difficult to argue with him. From here we go deeper into the tropics, into a forest that is 180 million years old. to a bird that evolution made more dangerous than any predator its size. The most dangerous bird on Earth is also the reason this forest is still alive.
That's not a dramatic exaggeration, it's ecology. The southern cassowary, standing up to 180 centimeters tall and weighing as much as 70 kilograms, is the sole disperser of seeds from the Daintree's largest trees. Remove it, and the forest begins to unravel from within. The Daintree Rainforest in far north Queensland has been running this same operating system for approximately 180 million years. The Great Dividing Range presses close to the Coral Sea here, locking in humidity and temperature at ground level so effectively that the microclimate has remained essentially stable across geological time. The forest outlasted the breakup of Gondwana. It was already ancient when the dinosaurs vanished. It absorbed multiple mass extinctions without structural collapse.
Among its understory grow plants whose lineages trace directly to the Cretaceous and Jurassic. Tree ferns, palm lilies, primitive flowering plants that botanists classify as living botanical fossils. The canopy is dense enough to reduce daylight to a dim, greenish haze. What survives beneath it is not a relic. It is a functioning Mesozoic system. The cassowary, number 8 on our journey, fits that system precisely. Zoologists describe the bird as a living analogue of a Cretaceous raptor, and the comparison holds structurally. 3 toes per foot, the inner one carrying a dagger-like claw up to 12 centimeters long. The casque on its head is a practical tool, not an ornament, deflecting dense undergrowth as the bird moves at speed. Its call operates near infrasound frequencies and carries for kilometers through the canopy. Officially recognized as the world's most dangerous bird, it does not attack unprovoked, but a cornered cassowary kicks with surgical force.
The relationship between cassowary and forest is one of mutual dependency, refined over an almost incomprehensible span of time.
Nature had already perfected this arrangement long before our species appeared. Number 9 takes us from a living archive to a geological one. Where Daintree hid its past beneath leaves, the next place sealed it inside stone, in a labyrinth of razor limestone pinnacles that remained beyond human reach until the late 20th century. The stone here will cut you, not metaphorically. The limestone blades of Tsingy de Bemaraha, number 7 on our list, will open skin on contact, and that single fact explains almost everything about this place. Tsingy isn't a forest. It isn't a mountain range. It's a stone labyrinth covering roughly 150,000 hectares in western Madagascar, where millions of limestone needles rise up to 30 meters and are separated by crevices and gorges dozens of meters deep. Rainfall has been dissolving and reshaping this karst for millions of years, honing each pinnacle to razor sharpness. The result is a landscape so alien it barely registers as Earth. Silver-grey peaks drifting in morning mist, canyons where midday sun never penetrates, and a silence that feels geological. Because the terrain is physically impassable without specialist equipment, most of the reserve stays closed, not by administrative decision, but by the simple reality of the rock. UNESCO recognized it as a World Heritage Site, but the most effective protection here was always the stone itself. The Malagasy name says it plainly. Tsingy means, roughly, the place where you cannot walk barefoot. And yet life doesn't merely survive in this hostile geometry, it has been perfected by it. Siphacus, white-furred lemurs with almost weightless bodies, move through the pinnacles in leaps of extraordinary precision. A mistimed jump by a fraction of a second means death on the blades below. There are no mistimed jumps. Their limbs, joints, and reflexes have been tuned over millions of years of selection to fit this exact landscape, as though the animal and the stone were shaped together. This is not adaptation as a loose concept. This is evolution operating under unforgiving physical constraint, producing a creature that exists nowhere else and could exist nowhere else. Next, a rainforest that has been growing for 180 million years. The most dangerous freshwater predator on Earth doesn't live in the Amazon, it lives in the Congo, and the river itself is the reason it survived. At number 6, we're looking at the Congo River and the Goliath tigerfish, Hydrocynus goliath, a combination that represents something rarer than any single species. A complete, largely untouched predatory ecosystem operating in near total darkness. The Congo is the deepest river on the planet.
Certain points along its course drop to 220 meters, depths where light never reaches, and where no research vessel has yet deployed instrumentation capable of withstanding the pressure long enough to survey what lives there. That depth isn't incidental. It's the product of a geological and ecological system that has kept the Congo Basin isolated for millions of years. The surrounding rainforest, the second largest tropical forest on Earth, functioned as a living buffer, absorbing external change before it could alter the river's interior conditions. Isolation, maintained across geological time, produces evolutionary stability, and evolutionary stability is precisely what allowed the Goliath tigerfish to persist in the form it holds today. Up to 1.5 meters long, up to 50 kilograms in weight, with 32 teeth individually shaped like razor blades and too large to retract behind closed lips.
The Goliath attacks crocodiles. Not accidentally, not defensively, but at speed and with apparent intent. Local fishermen, drawing on generations of direct experience with these waters, respond with a practical calculation. A significant portion of them refuse to enter the river at all. That behavioral fact tells you something no laboratory measurement can. The Congo's reputation extends beyond verified biology. For centuries, communities throughout the basin have described the Mokele Mbembe, a creature of enormous size, long-necked, larger than an elephant, said to inhabit the most impenetrable river channels. Scientists classify these accounts as folklore. What they cannot classify is the extent of what remains unexamined, because substantial portions of the Congo's deepest zones have never been biologically documented. The river keeps producing new species. It keeps withholding others.
If the Congo conceals its monsters behind darkness and depth, the next location on this list hides an entire world behind a different kind of barrier, vertical walls of stone that kept humans out for centuries. A jungle grows underground, watered by rain that never touches open sky. That is not a metaphor. Inside Hang Son Doong, number 5 on our list, located in Vietnam's Quang Binh province within the Phong Nha Ke Bang National Park, sunlight filters through 2 collapsed ceiling sections and sustains a tropical forest that reaches 30 meters tall, rooted in the cave floor. The reason this is possible explains everything about what kind of place this actually is. Hang Son Doong holds the title of the largest cave on Earth by volume. Its main chamber stretches more than 5 kilometers in length, rises 200 meters to the ceiling, and spans 150 meters across. The numbers are large enough to be meaningless until you use the right comparison. The interior volume is sufficient to contain an entire city block of skyscrapers. 1 cave, 1 chamber. A local farmer named Ho Khan first found the entrance in 1991. But the force of wind rushing out of the darkness drove him away. The cave remained essentially unknown to science until 2009, when a British expedition led by Howard Limbert completed the first full survey. The name itself describes the interior with geological accuracy. Hang Son Doong means mountain river cave, and the river is real, running underground for tens of kilometers into the dark. The 2 ceiling collapses that created those openings to the sky are known as dolines. They also produce a secondary effect. Warm air from outside meets the stable, cool temperature inside, generating localized clouds, mist, and actual precipitation. The cave generates its own weather. Isolated from the surface world for an estimated 3 to 5 million years, the ecosystem inside evolved independently. Species recorded here were previously thought extinct or had never been identified by science at all. The cave's calcite pearls, some reaching 8 meters in height, rank among the largest formations of their kind anywhere. Access is capped at 1,000 visitors per year, a limit set by the fragility of the environment rather than the difficulty of the journey. What comes next on our list is closed off not by permit, but by a kilometre of sheer vertical rock and a plateau summit that has no path leading up to it. A Komodo dragon will follow a wounded buffalo for 3 days without losing interest. It doesn't chase, it doesn't rush, it simply waits, moving steadily behind its prey until the animal collapses. That patience isn't a behavioural quirk. It's the product of a hunting logic refined over millions of years, still running in a living body today. Komodo Island sits in the eastern Indonesian archipelago, positioned between Sumbawa and Flores in the province of East Nusa Tenggara. The terrain is volcanic and unforgiving. Scorched grassland hills, sparse palms, mangrove shorelines baked by equatorial heat. It looks emptied out. It isn't. Varanus komodoensis is the largest living lizard on Earth. Adult males reach 3 meters in length and weigh up to 100 kilograms. Their bodies have remained structurally unchanged for millions of years. Flattened profiles, forked tongues that sample scent molecules carried on the air from up to 10 kilometers away, and scales reinforced by osteoderms, microscopic bone plates embedded beneath the skin that function as natural chainmail. Every physical feature is a solution to a problem that hasn't changed since the Mesozoic. The bite is where the science got complicated. For years, bacteria alone were thought to explain why prey that escaped a Komodo attack died within days. In 2009, researcher Brian Fry demonstrated the presence of venom proteins that actively prevent blood clotting. The result is the same either way: hemorrhage and shock. The dragon doesn't need a clean kill. The wound is the weapon. Around 3,000 individuals survive today, spread across a handful of islands. Humans haven't vacated the area. Local communities live alongside predators that show no instinctive fear of people, and documented attacks on humans have occurred. The island operates by rules that predate human presence entirely. Komodo earns a rating of 4, not because it's comfortable, it isn't, but because nothing else on the planet offers this. A Mesozoic predator at full scale, in the wild, still doing exactly what it was built to do. On a mountaintop in the Venezuelan Amazon, there are holes in the ground that contain species found nowhere else on Earth. Not because those species migrated there, but because they never left. They evolved in place, sealed inside cylindrical sinkholes carved into the summit of Sarisari-Nama Tepui, and the world outside simply does not apply to them. Sarisari-Nama rises to nearly 2,400 meters above sea level in the Jawa Sarisari-Nama region, and it ranks third on this list for a reason that becomes clear the moment you understand its geometry. The plateau itself is already an island in the sky, its vertical quartzite walls cutting it off from the surrounding jungle for millions of years. But on top of that isolation, the summit contains a second anomaly: near-perfect cylindrical shafts punched into the rock, each roughly 350 meters wide and 350 meters deep. There are multiple sinkholes. Each one operates as a closed system. The explanation for their shape lies in a geological paradox. Quartzite is one of the most chemically resistant rocks on the planet. It should not dissolve. Yet the acidic organic water produced by summit vegetation does exactly that, infiltrating the rock over geological timescales and slowly collapsing it from within. The result is a structure so rare that no comparable formation is known elsewhere on Earth. Aerial surveys first spotted them in the 1960s.
The first ground expedition did not reach the floor until 1974. When scientists finally descended, they found ecosystems that had been running in isolation long enough to produce entirely new species. Orchids, bromeliads, mosses, amphibians, and insects that exist in these sinkholes and nowhere else. Each cavity maintains its own microclimate, its own fog, its own light conditions, its own soil chemistry, distinct from the plateau surface just meters above the rim. The sinkholes of Sarisari-Nama are not geographical curiosities. They are replicated natural experiments in evolution. Each one asking the same question under slightly different conditions. What happens when life is given millions of years and no exit? 980 soldiers vanished in a single night. Not to gunfire, not to disease, but to teeth. Ramree Island, off the western coast of Myanmar, holds the Guinness World Record for the deadliest animal attack on humans in recorded history. And the perpetrators are still there. To understand what happened in February 1945, you have to understand the landscape first. Ramree sits in the Bay of Bengal, fringed by mangrove swamps so dense and disorienting that compass navigation becomes nearly useless. The water is rust-coloured and opaque, thick with silt, warm enough year-round to sustain the largest predatory reptile on Earth, the saltwater crocodile, Crocodylus porosus. These animals reach 6 meters in length and exceed a ton in weight. They do not chase. They wait, motionless for hours, invisible beneath the surface, triggering an attack only when prey is within range. Evolution stopped refining them tens of millions of years ago because it had already produced something close to perfect. When British forces encircled retreating Japanese troops on Ramree, roughly 1,000 soldiers chose the swamps over surrender. British naval patrols held the waterways. What followed, through the darkness of that single night, was described by naturalist Bruce Stanley Wright, who was present, as a scene of extraordinary horror. Screaming from the mangroves, churning water, and silence by dawn. Approximately 20 men emerged alive. The saltwater crocodile did not become more dangerous after 1945. It was always this dangerous. Ramree simply made that fact impossible to ignore. The swamps remain unchanged. Same brackish water, same root-tangled corridors, same hunters lying in wait. This is number 2 on our list. Brazil's navy doesn't ban civilians from many places. Ilha da Queimada Grande is one of the exceptions, and the reason has nothing to do with military secrecy. Known outside Brazil as Snake Island, this 43-hectare patch of land sits roughly 35 kilometers off the coast of São Paulo state. Landing without explicit government authorization is prohibited. The prohibition exists because the island holds the world's only wild population of Bothrops insularis, the golden lancehead pit viper, and that population is estimated at between 1 and 5 individuals per square meter. To understand how this happened, you have to go back to the end of the last ice age. As ocean levels rose, a section of coastal terrain was gradually cut off from the mainland. A small group of pit vipers was stranded with it. On the continent, their relatives faced ground predators and competed with larger animals. On the island, neither pressure existed. Over thousands of years, the population expanded until it saturated the available space. Every branch, every patch of leaf litter, every stretch of trail in the researchers' photographs is occupied. Isolation also changed the venom. Bothrops insularis feeds almost exclusively on migratory birds, prey that lands briefly and can fly away if not incapacitated immediately. The venom evolved accordingly. It is on average 5 times more potent than that of its closest mainland relatives. It combines hemotoxic and necrotic components in a rare configuration. It degrades vessel walls, disrupts blood clotting, and causes tissue death at the bite site. Confirmed human fatalities are few, but every documented encounter with this species has produced severe injury. The island's lighthouse, once staffed, has been automated for years. The last recorded keeper is believed to have died along with his family after snakes entered the building.
The details remain unverified, but the outcome was the same regardless. No one has been assigned to live there since. From a distance, Queimada Grande looks unremarkable. Atlantic fog, rocky shoreline, dense canopy. Nothing signals what the interior holds. That invisibility is part of what makes it number one on this list. The next location is different in nature. The danger there was partly historical, and what took place on a single night in 1945 remains the largest documented mass killing of humans by animals ever recorded. Jellyfish don't need to sting if nothing is trying to eat them. That's not a metaphor. That's exactly what happened in Palau's Jellyfish Lake, where an isolated population evolved away from its own venom over millennia because the threat simply disappeared. Evolution doesn't preserve what isn't necessary, and that logic runs through every single place on this list. Socotra has been drifting in the Indian Ocean for 6 million years. The result looks like another planet. Plants shaped by isolation into forms that exist nowhere else on Earth. California's coastal redwoods stand on the same ground they occupied during the age of dinosaurs. The Vallee de Mai in the Seychelles holds a palm forest that is, in geological terms, a surviving piece of Gondwana, a supercontinent that stopped existing tens of millions of years ago. The marine iguana of the Galapagos still behaves like a reptile-era animal because nothing forced it to change. The cassowary of Daintree is a functional raptor analogue walking through a rainforest. The Tsingy stone formations of Bemaraha are impassable to humans and perfectly navigable for lemurs. The Congo basin protects a predator that has no natural reason to fear anything. Son Doong cave holds an entire ecosystem that the surface world knows nothing about. Komodo is the last island where real dragons are not myth. Sarisari-Nama's sinkholes sealed off evolution inside stone cylinders. In 1945, Ramree Island reminded a retreating army who had been in charge of this planet before humans arrived. And Ilha da Queimada Grande is closed, permanently, officially, for good reason. 13 places, same rule in every one of them. Nature didn't adapt to us. If this list reached you, subscribe. There are more places where you simply don't belong.